Yo, what's good, boys? We are back at it again with another MLB The Show 25 video for you guys, and today we are going to be updating our top 50 players in the game for August. So we are doing something a little different this time. I'm not going to include any pitchers because I feel like pitchers that transcend difficulty, those are the ones I'll actually rank high on like a top 50 list like this, and clearly people are way too split on John Donaldson, Randy Johnson, Roger Clemens at this point. You got a group of people that say they all suck. You got a group of people that say they're still the best pitchers in the game. For me, I would probably have John on this list somewhere. It probably wouldn't be super high. And then Clemens, again, would probably be somewhere, but wouldn't be super high. But the people have spoken, and they say they're terrible. So we're not going to include pitchers of any sort. Even though there are probably some relievers that should belong on here. We're just not going to do that. We'll just save it for the next pitching tier list for you guys. So hopefully this helps you guys kind of decide what to grind, who's worth going for, make a late season World Series push. We also have Weekend Classic starting in about a week from now. So hopefully this kind of helps you guys structure your lineups and decide what's worth grinding. So if you enjoy the content, like, subscribe, all that. And let's hop into it. So first off, we have some honorable mentions, guys, that just missed the cut. This is probably the hardest top 50 I've done because everybody's a 99 right now, so you're almost splitting hairs on what cards make it, which ones don't. And you can see in our honorable mentions here, we have quite a few players. All right, so we have Anthony Volpe, Dave Parker, Edgar Martinez, Eric Davis, Eugenio Suarez, Jaron Duran, Joe Torre, and Kyle Tucker. For the most part, these guys either have really stiff competition at their position, or they just have bad stats, or a bad swing. I would say the only one here that I don't like their swing is Volpe. It's just he's statistically super similar to Willy Adames, who I don't already love. And then his swing, I think, is just worse than Adames. So I'm not going to put two of basically the same card on the tier list. All right, so I think we can move on and get down to the list. So Willy Adames, I think probably top 40. Statistically, there's almost nothing wrong with him. The speed isn't awesome, so he's never going to be like an Ellie caliber defensive shortstop just because he doesn't have the speed. So he's not going to get to those like squibs up the middle or anything that the third baseman like dives for and doesn't get there. But at this point of the game, usually those are hits anyway, so you can't really knock them for not throwing out the runner because a lot of people have a lot more speed than they did at the start of the game. Will Smith, probably top 40. Not one of the stronger catchers. One of the best budget cards in the game. If we were doing like top 10 budget cards, he would be on that list. Maybe we will in the future. But top 40 for now. And we will refine this list as we go. Willie Castro, I'm thinking top 20. Honestly, hitting wise, I kind of like the profile of the other Willie Castro more. This one's just basically a max out hitter against lefties, very mediocre against righties, but still has more power than the Tops Now one. But he has a primary of left field, and I feel like corner outfield's pretty weak. So he's not bad there. He can also play like second base and a ton of other weaker positions where you can sub him in at. So I think he's great in all of those. Borderline top 10 card, but I think the stats just kind of lack. Wenceel Perez, I included just barely as like an all-star player inclusion. If you're on all-star, he gives you pretty much all you need. Great swing, switch hitter, really good power stats. It's just, you know, on higher difficulties, the contact against righties I think is not great, and the clutch isn't awesome either. So he's probably an all-star only card at this point, but I feel like he's worth mentioning because on all-star he's probably going to play better than virtually all of these guys. Tony Clark, another guy. This is literally the last card on the list. I was sitting here scrolling through the item binder, going from like 96 to 99 overalls over and over again, just looking for other people to include in this list. Kind of deciding who should be honorable mention, who should be the last guy on the list, and the last guy I decided on is Tony Clark because I think his swing's pretty good. He's got some good quirks. His stats are decent enough. He's just a switch hitter. I think he's a great budget card, but for a lot of you guys, he's going to be tough to use just because of how tall he is. So I think he is literally the 50th guy on the list here. And if you want to insert any of these honorable mentions or your favorite card here, no problem with you doing that. Tim Raines, I think he's a top 50 guy. He's almost like Winsel Perez. He's like the opposite of Winsel, where he's more of like a legend guy. And if you're running him on other difficulties, I don't really understand why. So that's kind of my spiel on Tim Raines. I think he got his direct upgrade today in a card we'll talk about later. So I think he's just top 50. Ted Williams, top 20 for sure. Top 10 maybe. We'll see how the list kind of evens out. Ted Simmons, I don't love his swing. If you think he's like perfect and he's batting 450 for you, awesome. He's probably a top 10 card in the game for you. For me, I have not enjoyed his swing all year. This one's no different. Still has crazy quirks, still lines out a good amount because his power is just lower than his contact. So that's how it's going to be unless you have a max power guy. So I think top 30 is pretty fair for him. Moving on. Scott Rowland, another kind of begrudging inclusion here. I'm going to put him at like the top of top 50 because statistically he's still relevant. Quirks wise, he's still relevant. It's just not a card I'm trying to use at this point of the year, personally. Ryan Sandberg, nothing wrong with him. I get a ton of questions about him because he's a free card that pretty much everybody can go grind and get. And there's nothing wrong with the card. I think he's like a slightly upgraded Bobby Grich, who will also be on this list. So I think he's awesome for a free card. It's just his competition is just switch it and goons. So you're going to have to really like his swing. And for me, it's never a swing that I'm like overly fond of. I think he's got an all right swing. I wouldn't call it a bad swing, but he's definitely not an awesome card in my opinion. McMahon always has a nice swing, always performs for players. That being said, lefty and whatnot, and just not the craziest stats. He's not a crazy stats guy. He's almost like a 99 Devers would probably be stats wise, so probably better fielding than a Devers would have. Acuna, top 30. And you know a guy's swing is good when he's top 30 only off the swing. Because the defense isn't awesome. He is really fast, but the reaction's not great. So you're going to have to hope to get a decent reaction that the speed can make up for. And then he's got pretty much no quirks, and his stats aren't even really awesome. It's just the swing. So I think Acuna is very back end of top 30 just on how good his swing is. Kind of similar to Pete Alonso. Wherever Ted Simmons is where I'm going to rank Pete Alonso. A lot of people are very underwhelmed with this card. I think he's very good. I think on Legend, there might be other guys you'd want to go with at first base. For All-Star and Hall of Fame, I think he's pretty much perfect. I think he's got legitimately one of the best righty swings in the game this year. And then he's got max power. So if you touch the ball, it's going to go a long ways. He's also got really nice quirks. I have no complaints with this card, and the card art's fire. So kind of bonus points there. Mickey Mantle, I think he's kicking around like top 40 territory. He has aged kind of poorly. He is still a switch hitter, which carries quite a bit of weight. He still has pretty nice quirks. And statistically, there's nothing really wrong with him. It's just the swing is never great with Mickey. You got to really love it. And I personally do not really love it. So I think that's why he's either knocking on top 30. He might be in this back half of top 30, or he's like top 40. Man Ram, here we go. This is just right-handed Ted Williams. I think I would rather run him than Ted Williams. I said it. Sue me if you want, but he is an absolute stud. I love his swing. I would way rather hit righty-righty than lefty-lefty. I think he is an absolute stud. No problems with his swing. A lot of people did not like the swing they gave this one because it's not the same as the one from the start of the year. I didn't notice that much of a difference. I thought it was still very good. I think he is basically the left field version, little worse defensively, but I think he is the left field version of Jose Bautista. So if you don't have Joey Bats, Manny is a great alternative for that. I think he's just a phenomenal card. I don't know. He's a little overpriced just because we all know he's going to lose a lot of value come next Weekend Classic. He will at least half in price, if not more. But he's still an absolute stud. Leo DeVry, I view as very similar to Willie Castro. I'm going to put him under him. He is probably more valuable defensively. I don't love the swing. It's good. I would not call it one of the best I've used all year. A lot of people are on this hype train of him being the best card they've used all year. I don't see that. I think he's solid. I think he's decent. I would not call him one of the best I've used all year. Larry Legend, top 50, just not a guy I'm trying to use right now. The tiebreaker between him and Dave Parker was, I believe, Larry has a slightly better swing and Larry has better defense. So that was the tiebreaker. Other than that, they are very similar cards and play the same position. Lance Berkman, probably just top 40 because I feel like he's just a slightly worse version than Ted Simmons. I think the swing is slightly better. The quirks are virtually the same, and then his power is actually worse, where Berkman absolutely rakes against one side of the plate, but then against the other side, he's got that dreaded 85 power, that like Santana power, where sometimes you just get scammed. I think Ted has a little bit more than that, and he's just got way more contact all the time. So I think at this point, I would probably rather run Ted Simmons at first base than Lance Berkman. Kyle Schwarber. For me, wherever Ted is, Schwarber's there. So it's a little tough because you're probably not playing Schwarber in the field. You're probably DHing him. So it's not a one-to-one comparison. But when I think of lefty bats I'm not trying to pitch to, it's Kyle Schwarber. It's Ted Williams right now. I think they're 1A, 1B. For me, I think Schwarber has a better swing. Ted Williams has the better quirks. And then Ted Williams will be the better fielder if you're actually looking to play one of them in the field. So I think they're pretty indistinguishable. I think wherever you put one, you kind of have to put the other. Ketel Marte, our first bona fide top 10 card. For my money, the best hitter in the game right now. Now, the reason he won't be the best card is because he doesn't bring the defense that some of these other cards bring. But I think for me, he is my favorite hitter. He is the hitter I look forward to the most coming up with like runners on base. It's been Ketel all year. It's still Ketel. Card's awesome. Griffey. I haven't got a million reps with him so far, but I think very back end of top 10. Any other year, he probably would be like a top 5 card, especially with the stats that he has. But I think there's a just heavy lefty-lefty tax this year with how many awesome lefty starters there are. And we got at least one more today in Johan Santana. People will go back and forth on Pettit, but at least we got another one with Johan Santana. So it's kind of tough there. Profar, top 40. I view him as similar to Berkman, where he has, I think, better average power than Berkman, but Berkman has like more peak power, I believe. Or they might be very similar. They might be very similar cards now since I'm really sounding it out. I think Berkman might have a little more contact against one side. I think they both have about the same swing to me. I wouldn't call either of them like amazing swings, and I wouldn't call either of them bad swings. And then they both have really good quirks. So I think Profar is just pretty much a free Berkman, assuming you're going to run him at first base. Caminero, top 50. I think I would compare him to Scott Rowland, where, yeah, the defense is going to be way worse, and that's probably why they're on the same field. But I think Caminero's swing is way better. I think his quirks are way better, and his hitting stats in general are way better. I would probably rather run him than hit lefty-lefty with Ryan McMahon. So maybe McMahon gets moved down. We'll just kind of have to see how it plays out. For me, J-Ram kind of goes where Acuna is. For me, it's honestly kind of a coin flip for me running Caminero or J-Ram at third. I would probably lean J-Ram just for the speed and the defense and the switch hitting ability. But it would be a serious conversation. I think both of them are really good. Neither of them I would call the best at their position. Joey Bats, probably back end of top 10. I love this card. I don't know where the hate parade on him is coming from. I love him. I think he does a great job of countering a lot of the really good lefty starters in the game right now. And for me, he hasn't struggled at all against righties. Last week in Classic, him and Manny Ramirez were most of my offense, and they hit off righties with outlier sinkers a ton. So I think they're just both studs. I think they're pretty indistinguishable. I would just say I believe Jose Bautista is faster and he is a better fielder. So I think that puts him above Manny for me. I think they're both very, very similar cards, and I rate both of them pretty highly. Jose Altuve, about 50. It just perennial. That word disrespected. Like, honestly, his swing is so good every year. It's just he's such a defensive liability. This one at least is already a primary second baseman. I believe he has 75 fielding. So in theory, if you superfractored him, he wouldn't be the worst defender in the world, other than being kind of short. So that might hurt him a little bit, but I think he is one of the more disrespected cards every single year. I think he's an absolute stud. And I enjoy his swing every year. So I think it's worth including him, especially for, I believe, a free card. I think he was in the last Spotlight program. Jorge Posada, I think he goes in front of Griffey, right behind Ketel Marte. My favorite catcher I've used all year, by far. Like, I could have been using the 92 Posada up until Cal Raleigh came out, and I feel like you couldn't have called me crazy because his swing was that good. When Cal Raleigh came out, the stats are just way too good to deny it. But now that we have this 99 Posada, I can firmly say he is the best catcher in the game. I think he's a top 5 hitter in the game. He is an absolute stud. Always love Posada cards. This one is no different. He's pretty much perfect. He's not the fastest guy in the world, but 50 speed for a Posada card is being pretty generous. Usually he's got like 35, so we will take that. He is probably my catcher for the rest of the year. The downside of this is it means we probably will not get another Posada for the rest of the year, so this is statistically the best one we'll get, but he is an absolute stud. Jimmy Rollins, top 30. Very top of top 30 or very bottom of top 20. I think I have made up my mind that I like to rise more. Call me crazy. I think I like the All-Star Ellie more. I think I'd probably rather run Willie Castro at shortstop just for the bat. Rollins is just tough for me because he's really short. So anytime somebody throws a high fastball, I have a really good eye. I don't really swing at them, so it doesn't bother me. But that's kind of a tax you have to pay for using such a short player, is you will go chasing those high fastballs sometimes. And in general, with me, he's just already a really short player, so he gets a smaller PCI. And then if people are throwing you like opposite-handed circle changes and shrinking your PCI like they tend to do on higher difficulties, sometimes you're just looking at PCI that's like that big. And it's a mental block for me. So I don't like him. He's not crazy quirks-wise. He's a card that I don't see the hype with every year. I think he's really good every year. I just don't think he's the best shortstop in the game, in my opinion. Jackson Chourio, another guy similar to Tony Clark, where he just barely makes the list. Like, if you prefer Eric Davis or somebody, cool. I think his swing is kind of disgusting. I don't think it's the best swing in the world, but statistically, he blows most of these other cards out of the water, so I gave it to him. Gil Hodges, probably top 40. I think that's fair because at first base, I would rather run Pete Alonso, I would rather run Ted Simmons, and I would rather run Dick Allen. But other than those three, I can't name too many other first basemen I would rather run than Gil Hodges. He's still pretty relevant. He's still a super solid card, and no complaints. I think he is very similar to like running Profar at first or Berkman at first. It's just those other guys are switch hitters, so it really is up to you if you're that comfortable with Hodges' swing to have to hit off like Corbin Burns and Ubaldo with outlier sinkers. George Brett, top 30, I think. This is a card where when he came out, I could have immediately told you he was overpriced because everybody wanted to use George Brett. I get it. His swing's always kind of butter. It's just the power's not great. I don't think the lefty swing is good enough necessarily to just outright nullify having to hit lefty most of the time. So for me, he's cool. He's just overpriced for what he is. I think there's other third basemen I'd rather use. Still a good card, but I think there's just other directions I would go. I view Jimmy Rollins and this All-Star game. Lindor is pretty similar. Rollins will play better defense because he has way more arm strength and he's faster. I think Lindor's swing is just slightly better. I think quirks-wise, it's a push between the two of them. So I view them as pretty similar. Lindor is also a lot more economic for you guys, a lot easier to afford. So I think they're pretty much on a level playing field. I wouldn't put one over the other, and I would easily, I think, put DeVry and Willie Castro over them. I also like that these two have secondary positions, so if you're playing DeVries at shortstop and we get a new like 99 Ellie that you want to use, you can just move DeVries to second base. Whereas Rollins and Lindor you can play them at like hidden secondaries, but they're still out of position. They still are more prone to making errors than they usually would be. Ethan Holiday, sympathy inclusion for that one guy that just raves about Ethan Holiday. Don't really love the card. Don't want to sit here and have to hit lefty with a card with no quirks and just nothing crazy about him. I don't think his swing is awesome. Maybe top 50's harsh. Maybe he's a top 40 card. But it's nothing really to hang your hat on. I might move him up, but for now I'm going to be harsh. Just to spite that guy. Let's see. I think I'm putting Ellie near Leo DeVry and Willie Castro. I still think this card is superb. And I do have him super fractured, so maybe in my head, like, his stats are a little bit better than what y'all might be thinking. I think his swing is amazing. I think his stats are good enough. I think most of his overall, not being a 99, is honestly just his fielding attribute. His fielding's not awesome. His reaction's not awesome. He still has an absolute cannon. He has bobbled one ball. I would say he's made one error for me in the many innings I've used him. He also has a secondary of third base, so similar to like Rollins and Lindor, where I think Lindor actually does have third base. Maybe I'm just making that up. But I hate that Rollins just has no secondaries, where you can move Ellie around the diamond, doesn't hurt your team. Eli. This is a card I'm not dying to use. I would probably rather use him than Ethan Holiday, but again, that's not a strong inclusion. Not my favorite card in the world whatsoever. I think he's actually got more value in center as like a budget, like a poor man's Beltran. But even then, I have not loved the swing. I don't love the quirks. I think he's just meh. Dick Allen. I think he goes right here with Pete Alonso. I wouldn't necessarily call him better than Pete Alonso. Pete has more power. Dick Allen, I don't even know if he has better quirks. I think they're just very similar level cards, where as far as righty first baseman, I would rather run both of them over Gil Hodges personally. And then I think they're in the talks with like any switch hitter you could put at first base. So I think for that reason, I view them both pretty similar as like top 30 cards. David Wright, I'm going to give probably top of top 40. Some of y'all might think that's harsh. Maybe he's like top 30. I think I view him as close to George Brett and close to J Ram, where it's like, I probably don't want to be running any of these guys at third base, but if you do, I see why. Because statistically, this David Wright is basically perfect. Like, I think his power is a little lackluster, but his contact is awesome. His clutch is awesome. His defense is awesome. I think his quirks are pretty good. It's just, for me, I've never loved his swing. I don't think his swing is a premium right-handed swing. For me, if they gave us like an out of position Derek Jeter for some reason and he could play third and he had the exact same stats as David Wright, I would much prefer that card over David Wright. I just don't love his swing year to year, and for me, I'm probably just good on this card. I think it's an awesome free card. I'm glad everybody can obtain him pretty easily. I think the card art's sick, but I think he's just like front half of top 30. For whom the bell tolls. Yeah, if I'm running a lefty first baseman, I probably would prefer George Brett. Is he overpriced? Yes, but statistically, quirks wise, when you break them down, I'd rather run George Brett. I don't really want to run either of them, but if you were going to make me run a lefty third baseman, I would prefer George Brett over Bellinger. Now, you could run him in the outfield. I think he easily fits in more so at first base, but if you have a corner outfielder you don't love, then I kind of get it, and maybe that puts him in like Acuna territory. But for me, I'm just kind of good on him. Chipper, back half of top 20. Yeah, I said it. I would rather use Chipper Jones than the new David Wright, than George Brett, than Jose Ramirez. I just think he's better than all of them. Then Dick Allen. I forgot Dick Allen is actually a primary third baseman. So I think that's a pretty good comp. Like, David Wright is a better statistical third baseman than Dick Allen, but I think Dick Allen swings better. I think their quirks are pretty similar, so I think that's a pretty good comp on those. But I would rather run Chipper at third over all of them. I would rather run Ellie at third over all of them. So for that reason, he's top 20 for me still. Chase Utley, probably just in like this back half of top 50 where it's like this card would have to be a lot better stats wise for me to want to deal with the lefty stuff with him. I agree, he does have a pretty nice lefty swing, and I love his bat flip, and honestly he has one of the most smooth feeling swings in the game. It's very similar to like a second base kind of George Brett, where it is just a really smooth swing, but his stats just aren't crazy enough for me to want to go out of my way to run him when our alternatives at second base are like Ketel Marte and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think Chase just bringing up probably the back half of top 50. Santana, I think he gets in like right behind Ted Simmons, where I think Ted Simmons would probably be a better switch hitting catcher for most of you guys. It just shows you how crazy this Santana was for when he came out. And then I think if you're playing him as a switch hitting first baseman, I think he is on par with Gil Hodges, on par with Jurickson Profar, on par with Berkman, where he's a little more extreme, where he hits lefties really good and righties not a ton, whereas all those other guys are a little more well balanced. But I still think he's really good. I still think his swing is incredible. It's just all those other guys have quirks on him and just stats on him. So I think he is still really good. I think it's hilarious that a while ago we were having conversations of, I don't want to lock this card in for 400K to use him for a couple weeks until a new one comes out, or a new catcher comes out, and he's still relevant to this day. So I think that's hilarious that we were having conversations like that. Correa, top of top 20. I feel like it's pretty fair for him. Stats wise, there's nothing wrong with this card. It's just not my favorite swing in the world. I enjoyed the 89 and Weekend Classic earlier in the year. But again, if I'm going to run a righty third baseman, I think I like Jose Bautista at third base more. From the limited sample size I've seen of him there's nothing wrong with him. He actually plays a pretty good third base. And then I think he's pretty much on par with Chipper Jones. So probably towards the latter half of this tier, basically right next to Chipper. Beltran, here we go. Still, I think the best card in the game. I kind of hinted at it earlier with Marte, where I don't think he's the best hitter in the game now. I think I can firmly say Ketel Marte's a better hitter. I think Jorge Posada might be a better hitter just because Marte has better quirks than Carlos Beltran. And then I think both of them might have a better swing than Carlos Beltran by a little bit. But Beltran still brings insane speed and stealing on the base pass, which is something those two other cards do not bring. And he brings premium defense for his position. Now, Marte isn't a bad defender in theory. In practice, he's been pretty terrible for me at second base for whatever reason. And then Jorge Posada is like bang on average for his position, which will be an upgrade from Cal Raleigh. So they both bring some defensive value, but nowhere close to Beltran when you're bringing like PCA level defense in center field, and you're a switch hitter, and you have just some of the best hitting stats in the game, he's still the best card. Cal Raleigh, probably towards the back half of the top 10. I never really meshed super well with this card. I just never have loved his swing. I think it's all right. I think he's all right. I think the only reason people are enamored with this card is because of just the max hitting stats. Because for a lot of people, this is probably their first max hitting stats card of the year. First card with like 125 power and whatnot. And he just hits the ball different for them. For me, he's just like middle of the pack, never really a comfortable at bat, doesn't hit as many home runs as you might think he should. He's still a really good card, and you know, there's a world where you catch Posada and DH Cal Raleigh. It won't be the world I'm living in, but I can't argue with the stats of Cal Raleigh. Big Aaron Judge. Probably one of the more disrespected cards in the game. I feel like nobody runs him. I think he's better than Acuna, so I think he gets back half of the top 20. When you're looking at right fielders, I think Jose Bautista kind of just craps all over him, for lack of a better term. Like, he has, in my opinion, a slightly better swing than Aaron Judge. You don't have to deal with the ridiculously tall strike zone. And I think they're very similar quirks-wise as well. And I think Bautista just edges him out stats-wise. I think he's a better defender. I think he's faster. And I think his hitting stats overall might just be better than Aaron Judge. So Judge, still a good card, still a decent option. And I've played some people that hit really good with him, but it's just not a card that you see a lot. Buxton, I view as pretty similar to Judge and just a better card than Acuna. I think his swing is very, very close to Acuna, where you can go back and forth and argue either way who has the better swing, but Buxton just has way better offensive stats and way better quirks than Acuna. So if both of them are going to play bad defense in right field, just give me the guy with maxed out quirks and potentially a better swing. I think Byron also carries value as a DH, whereas you're probably not going to want to DH Acuna just because just the overall stats aren't really there. You don't really care about having a 99 speed DH. Bernie. Is Bernie top 10? I really don't want Bernie to be top 10. I can't do it. I think Bernie fits in here. I think he's a top 20 card. I've never really loved Bernie. He's almost like my outfield Jimmy Rollins, except like when we had the XP Path Rollins at the start of last year, I thought that card was really good. I love that card. Now, I never went out of my way to wild card him like some people did. That's why I say I don't really get the hype with Rollins cards as much. But Bernie, I've never loved, like the action figure one or whatever it was called. It was a cool card. It's never one that I've loved. I think his swing is just mid. I think we have inflated perspective of it because he is a switch hitter. And he's got some really nice quirks, but then his power is not crazy. So he's still a top 20 card. It sounds like I'm being very negative on him. He's still a top 20 card. I think he's probably worth every penny of 150K, especially if you like don't have Beltran. And he is just a direct upgrade on Tim Raines. He was who I was hinting at earlier, where he's just a direct upgrade on Tim Raines. He's probably a direct upgrade on Mickey Mantle, because while his swing is not awesome, in my opinion, it's definitely better than Mickey Mantle's, and the speed and defense isn't that crazy of a drop-off. Next up, the Bambino. Wherever Kyle Schwarber is, I'm going to put the Bambino. It's that simple. Some people, he has some people's favorite swings. For me, in recent history, his swings have gotten worse somehow. And his quirks aren't crazy on this card. He also does not have first base secondary. If he had first base secondary, I think he would be a stronger inclusion here, maybe even a top 10 card in the game. But for me, I'm good. I think he's super overpriced at like 400K, what he's going for. I think card art's fire. Doing the Milestone Club in grayscale is awesome. I think whoever did the card art absolutely snapped. But that being said, I think he is really overpriced for what he is. He doesn't have perfect quirks. He's not perfect as a hitter. So I think he's cool. I think he's like a right field Ted Williams kind of, and I expect he will lose value in the future. But if you're comparing him to other right fielders, I'd rather run Griffey in right. I'd rather run Beltran in right. I'd rather run Jose Bautista in right. And I think it's a serious conversation between like him and Aaron Judge, him and Byron Buxton, guys like that. So maybe top 20 might even be generous for that card. Brooks Lee, I'll put him next to Eli, where it's never a good, it doesn't feel like a good at bat with Brooks Lee. I'm including him here as like a third baseman or maybe a DH. Just no quirks, not a good swing in my opinion, but he's a switch hitter with max out contact, and some people swear by him. So I'm going to include him, and I do think he is better than virtually all of these cards. Bobby Grit. So here he is, just worse Ryan Sandberg in my opinion. Some people might like the swing a little more, so if that's kind of a tiebreaker for you, then I get it. But he's just, yeah, I think he's worse Ryan Sandberg in my opinion. So he's still really solid. If you put some parallels on him, he can be good. Let's go ahead and just put this guy here, because some people will ask. I still like Juan Soto. It's hard to justify him, right? Because your other lefty DHs are like Kyle Schwarber, it's Ted Williams, it's Babe Ruth now. So I think there's just other lefties you'd probably rather use. And gone are kind of the days of full timing a lefty to be DH. If you're full timing a lefty, it's going to be Babe Ruth, it's going to be Ted Williams, it's going to be Kyle Schwarber, and even then, you're probably just going to platoon them. So. All right, so let's clean up the tier list. We need to knock somebody down here. It seems like that it will be Ryan McMahon, which I'm not mad about. And then we need to bring up, what? 4 players in the top 10. So I was kind of stingy with my top 10. I think I'm fine with putting Manny there because, like I said, he's very similar to Jose Bautista. Tiebreaker, I would go to Bautista, but I think they are very similar. I think... Kyle Schwarber goes up here as just being the best lefty hitter in the game, in my opinion. Like I said, I think he's very similar to Ted. I think he's pretty similar to Babe. I like the more modern swing. Ted Williams just never really clicked for me lefty-lefty. I'm sure Babe Ruth would be pretty good lefty-lefty. Kyle Schwarber has been good lefty-lefty for me, so that's going to be my tiebreaker there. And then we got to bring up some other guys. I'm not going to have multiple of the same guy, so not going to put Babe up here, not going to put Ted, because like I said, I prefer Schwarber. So I'll give Willie Castro top 10. It's not super strong from the small sample size I have played with this card. I will say he plays a lot like the Topps Now one. Plays an awesome left field where the reaction isn't awesome, but he just has a cannon. I think he has like 94 base throw power. So, you know, you put some more arm strength, I guess would be the term. You put some parallels on him, I think he gets like 97 plus easily. So he has an absolute cannon. So like for me, my outfield right now is Griffey, Beltran, and Castro. So they all have insane throw power, which is kind of where you need to be at this point of the year. I don't think I'm comfortable calling DeVries a top 10 card in the game. I definitely do not want to call... I wouldn't give it to like Chipper or Ellie just because their stats are too bad, and that would be a little too biased on my behalf, I think. So I guess I'll go DeVry. I'll go DeVry. We'll give the tie to a switch hitter. And then that is our top 10 cards in the game. Is that the correct order? Call me crazy. I think these two are pretty similar, where like stats wise they should be better than what they are, and in my opinion neither of their at bats feel like super great. But that is our top 10. Let's do our top 20. So we need to bring up 2, so 2 people are getting promoted here. I will promote Jimmy Rollins because both of the other shortstops in this tier got bumped up. And then any first baseman here. There's no first baseman. I will give it to Ted Simmons, just because I feel like he's kind of the de facto option. And you know, the alternatives in this tier are like George Brett and Dick Allen and Pete Alonso. So I feel like I'll give it to the switch hitter. For me, I would prefer Pete Alonso, but I think for most people, they are more than happy running Ted Simmons. Is this our order though? I think I would have Chipper over Correa. I think Correa versus Ellie is a serious conversation. I think Judge, he's here with Ted Simmons for being like close to the worst in this tier. And I think I'm cool with that. That's solid. Top 30. In my opinion, David Wright is like right-handed George Brett, where I'm not really trying to use either of them, but they are just kind of lefty-righty versions of themselves. I think I'm cool with just letting Jimmy Rollins be better than Lindor. I did say they're pretty similar, but you know, there is still at the end of the day a reason one is 200K and one is like 8K, and that's because this one has 99 speed and like 95 arm. So you kind of have to take that into account a little bit. I prefer P over Dick Allen. I prefer P over Sandberg if you looked at them as like DHs. And then I think him versus Brett is a pretty interesting one. So we actually need to bring up two more players here. I think Mickey makes it just on stats. Like, there's nothing wrong with this Mickey. It's just the swing isn't great. So if you don't hit good with him, I understand it. And then to be nice to the guys in the tier list from earlier, I will bump Jurickson Profar up. I'm willing to do that. I'll give him the slight nod over Gil Hodges, Bergman, and Santana, where I feel like if you really like any of these guys, they're arguably better than Profar. But I think Profar, for being a completely free card that you can log onto the game and play moments for 10 minutes to get, is an awesome card. These two are definitely the worst in here. I would bump Caminero. I would probably do something like that is probably how I would rank the top 40, and then top 50. I think Winseal and Tim Raines are the worst here, and then Tony Clark's pretty solid. Churio's not bad. Scott Rowland, I'll put at the top just because, like I said, stats wise, there's nothing wrong with this card. Ethan Holiday versus, yeah, I'm not trying to spend. Okay, here's the rationale for why Ethan Holiday is going to be this low. I'm not trying to use, right? You have to kind of view lefties in your lineup as a limited resource because of how often you're going to see lefty. So you kind of have to wait where you want to spend that spot at. And for me, I would rather, you know, we have King Griffey, we have Kyle Schwarber, we have Babe Ruth, we have Ted Williams, we've even got, you know, George Brett, who I would rather run. So there's a million lefties in front of him. I'm not trying to spend a lefty spot at shortstop, where you also have guys like Leo DeVries, Willie Castro, Ellie, Jimmy Rollins, that are just better cards in general. So there's a whole lot of reasons to not be running a lefty shortstop. Until we get a Corey Seager, I'm good on lefty shortstops. I would rather use Altuve than Utley. You could maybe make an argument for Altuve over Bobby Grich, to be honest. And then I think I would put Larry Walker probably somewhere around here. So that is our top 50 players video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you want to see the tier list for yourself, link will be down in the description. But after I save these, it does randomize the players within the tiers. So you'll have to rewatch a video if you want the exact order. But hopefully you guys enjoyed. Hopefully this helps you out with building your lineups or going for other collections. Till next time.